pjnet.tv. Good evening, it's 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and our bumper is running, and our special star of the show guest is waiting in our green room and our chat rooms. Would much rather hear her than me. So let's count it down to Studio 13, starting now. Well, good evening and welcome to, whoa, what did I do? We have more stuff for you. There. Welcome. Okay, we're ready now. Let's start over on 3, 2, 1. This is pjnet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Prasick, and we are in for a special edition. It's special. Every edition is special. Every program. But tonight we're going to have extra time because we have booked one guest because we have two topics to discuss, and our guest tonight is no stranger to the PJNet family. In fact, she's part of the PJNet family, and Starr Ayers. Oh, I see what I did wrong. Okay, here, I'll fix it, folks. Starr Ayers joins us tonight, and we'll get it ready here. There we go. Yes. Starr Ayers joins us tonight from her working office. This is the factory, the word factory, where it all happens. And Starr, I can't begin, I don't know where to start. You have been so busy, but let's just start with, well, a book launch. You have the second in the series. Now, would you consider this a sequel? Is Emma's Quest
It is a sequel. Yes,
okay.
It is a sequel.
But it was intended to be a two-part series, wasn't it?
It was always from the very beginning. I was contracted for 2 books.
All right.
Mountain Brook Inc. contracted me for 2 books, and the first one was For the Love of Emma, and then the sequel is Emma's Quest.
Emma's Quest picks up, for those of you that have read For the Love of Emma, well, you tell the story. Emma is based on a character that you know.
Yeah. Yes. If you read For the Love of Emma, you know that I found letters in my mother's trunk about 2 years after she died, and they were from her first love that I knew nothing about. There were like 79 letters that he wrote her in 13 months. She was a waitress at the Rainbow Restaurant in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and met this young soldier from Fort Bragg. And so that was the beginning of my fiction writing career. And I never thought I would write fiction. It took God a long time, about 1.5 years, to convince me, even after I found the letters, that I was going to write this book. But, I dived into it, and he just helped me every step of the way, along with wonderful conferences that I went to and wonderful instruction. And yeah, that first book has been very successful. And so now with Emma's Quest rolling out, it launched, the paperback came out March 22nd, and then the digital ebook came out April 5th. And so a lot, it's really up the sales of Emma. As a matter of fact, For the Love of Emma is outdoing right now Emma's Quest, because people see Emma's Quest and they know, oh, I've got to read the first one. So that's exciting that, I know everybody, I have faith in my book that those who read the first one, I'm trusting, are going to come back and read the second one. So it's just been an exciting time, but like you say, it's just been super, super busy.
Well, it's I've read both, and it's hard to explain the second one without spoiling the first one. So I got to be kind of careful.
I know
here.
We got to be careful about the spoilers. But I do want to say, before you go any further, that you were kind enough to give me an endorsement. And I appreciated that so much. And so I just want to thank you.
Well, I was honored. I don't, I'm not a literary type person, but I did read the book and enjoyed it. And knowing the author, and knowing that these are not just fictional characters, pulled out of the air. These are people, right, that so it ties it all together. But my overall impression, Emma was a very solid, predictable. What's the word I'm looking for? Fits like,
She was very strong-willed, and she knew what she wanted.
yeah.
And as a lot of women in that era, and Emma, the first book, was 38 and 39. Emma's Quest goes from 39 to 1945. It goes through the war. But Emma, she was very strong-willed, very independent. She knew what she wanted. She wanted to find true love and settle down and have a family. That was her goals. And of course, in the book, you see that she really loved to read, and so she even branched off into writing in book 2. And Emma's character is my mother, and so that is her. Everything that I just said is straight out of her life, and because she did write some, she actually had a few little poems, published, but she didn't really go very far with it. In that day and age, it was harder than it is now. For someone who wasn't really educated, she'd worked in a restaurant, and that was about it before she married my dad. And so, it was a simpler time, but I just loved being able to go back to that time in my mind and just to kind of get a hint of what her life was like, even more so. It's things that she never really talked about. And so it's been fun to kind of get a peek. Now, when I get to St. Peter's Gate, and she knows that I have published 2 books about her and her pictures are in them, I don't really know how happy she's going to be with me, because she was a very private person.
The most surprising thing to me in the second book was Emma, who I had gotten to know as a strong-willed, yes, but conservative, predictable, rock solid, on a whim. Now, this was in the late 30s or the early 40s.
Yes.
On a whim, chases a beckoning call from a man in Chicago, and she leaves what amounts to Mayberry.
Exactly.
And finds herself in the middle of Chicago.
Exactly.
And Starr, women didn't do that back then.
My mother did.
I bet she did. But that was unheard of.
If people read the first book, Emma met Noah in the Rainbow Restaurant.
Uh-huh.
Well, without saying too much about that relationship, she also met Drew in the Rainbow Restaurant. And so this story, Emma's Quest, picks up with that, where, yes, she was born in Hope Mills, North Carolina, moved just a little bit away to Fayetteville, and had never really been anywhere. And when Drew came into the Rainbow Restaurant, he was from Scotland, and he had been to Canada, stayed in Canada for 5 years, came down to the States. He did artwork for newspapers, traveled the United States, and he ended up in Fayetteville, drawing for the Fayetteville Observer, and that is where Drew met Emma. And so, she only knew him for 4 months, and she picked up from her home in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and her mother was still alive, and I'm sure that didn't go over well.
I imagine the gasps were everywhere.
Yeah. So she picked up and got on a train and went to Washington, D.C., and got on another train and went from Washington to Chicago, where she met Drew.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. We wouldn't think much about that today, but that was a bold and brave woman, and I can just hear the gossip. I can hear it. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're leaving us, and everything that. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, like I said, she was strong-willed, and she knew what she wanted, and it's just like you say, it's so hard to talk about the second book without talking about the first book and giving something away. But I can do this on the back of my second book. you know, in the first book, Emma's relationship with Noah was rocky. So on this one, it says, this time she'll cling tighter, pray harder, and fight longer for the man she loves. And
Hmm.
so that was the attitude, and that's what put her on that train. She wasn't going to let this one get away.
Well, and there were strains because World War II took a toll. There was no lives at that time here in the United States that were not impacted in some way by World War II.
Exactly. Exactly. Even the women, went to work in factories and everything. But yeah, it was a big step. And it's hard for me to believe that my mother had that kind of courage, but,
Hmm.
she did.
Well, the book will take you from the United States, from little Podunk, North Carolina, to Chicago, to Europe, to Scotland, to Italy.
Exactly.
You
And I
know,
loved that. Yeah, they say write what you know. I didn't know anything when it came to book two. I didn't know anything. I've been to Chicago, and I lived in St. Louis till I was 11, and so I know that, and it also takes place in Fayetteville and Asheboro, and I knew that. I have not been to Scotland, although my father was born there, and I haven't been to Sicily. And so it took a lot of research, and but I learned so much, and now I think I want to go to Scotland more than ever since I've researched more and more about where my father grew up.
hmm
Um,
hmm
but he left there when he was 21. He was a young artist, and he felt like he had more opportunities in the United States, and so he came over to Canada. His brother was already in Canada and came down to the States, and after about 5 years, and made a living as a traveling artist. So he was a traveling man.
Well, and that was the amazing contrast to me. Is
Mm-hmm.
he was
Mm-hmm.
quite comfortable jetting from, not jetting, but back then, but whisking from here to there. But women didn't do that, especially unescorted. And
But see, that was part of the fascination for her,
mhm.
was that she wanted to see the world. She
Yeah,
wanted to break out of her little box, and because she read so much. She wanted to read to be and see some of the places
right.
that she'd read about.
Hmm.
And so, and I'm not saying she didn't love him, but she saw him as an opportunity to
Right.
do that.
Hmm. He delivered on that.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
he
folks,
did.
by the way, they do return back to North Carolina. But an amazing work, and that completes the series. But folks, I want to tell you that Starr is amazing. I don't know where she finds the energy or the drive, but she has it. While this is happening, this book launch, as we speak, accompanying Starr in her home this week is Stephanie Pavlantos. So you've got the launch of this new book.
And her husband. She brought her husband, Mike. And we got
Yeah.
two mics in the room now. We got two mics in the house now. We got Mike A and Mike P.
One wasn't enough, I guess. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. But you girls have been fast and furious working around the clock on a new work.
Right. We have been so blessed. And God just seems to drop things in my lap. The things that I kind of prepare for and that I think, oh, well, maybe this will be published or this will be published, they don't seem to go anywhere. And then all of a sudden, he'll drop something in my lap. So he dropped these fiction books in my lap with the letters. And so I get through with that, and I think, well, I'm going to, revert back to the things that, I knew and that I was trying to get published, and I'll see what I can do with them now. And then I happened to watch your program one night when Stephanie was talking about her son who has cerebral palsy, and I didn't know that she had a disabled child. And of course, I have a daughter who has Down syndrome. And so when I heard her talking on your program, I immediately connected with her. It was just such a precious interview, and she was so vulnerable, and the tears
Right.
came. And
She was pouring her heart out. She was.
she was, and it grabbed mine. And so I just made a little comment after the show was over. I couldn't go by and say nothing, and I just thanked her, for being willing to open up like that. And so then, I think it was you that said on the comment that, well, maybe one day there'll be a book about this, Starr. Do you know any good writers? So then Stephanie and I got to talking about that. And so here we are. And we're working on we've just about got our proposal polished. We have a few more things to do, but that was the goal of her coming down this week, is that we could, sit across the table from one another, and that we could polish up what we had been doing, via texting. And of course, we've had a lot of Zoom meetings, but yeah, it's going really well. And let me just tell you that we are so grateful to the writers that we ask for stories from guardians, caregivers, parents, siblings, therapists, anybody who had hands-on, almost 24/7 care of these children or young adults or whoever they are now. But we asked for stories, and we got a pile of stories. And so in our book, the book is called Room at the Table, Stories of Encouragement from Families of Special Needs, or Special Needs Families. And so I think we've got right around 60 stories going in the book. We couldn't take all of them, but we've got about 60 stories in the book. And we just counted tonight, we have 34 writers. So they could write up to 3 stories. So some of them just wrote 1 story, some of them wrote 3 stories. So we have 34 writers and probably around 60 stories. And, we sit there and then we read the stories, and, tears just come to our eyes. And some of them are just so touching. And even though some of them weren't even writers, we've been able to take their work and edit it. And because we had a good foundation, it was a beautiful story. And so it didn't really take a lot of tweaking to edit them. Most of them didn't have major edits. So it's been a lot of work, but I think it's going to be very rewarding. And what's so rewarding is, I just remember when I started writing, and I was first put in 2 anthologies, and at different times, but that was my first published work, was in an anthology, and just the joy that comes from that. And some of these people that are in the anthologies, they've been trying for a long time to get something published about their special needs child. And so just the thank yous that we get from them, I mean, you can just feel the gratefulness, when you read their words about how important it was and how thankful they are that somebody's going to hear their story. It's just really sweet.
As great as I feel about Stephanie's work, her Jewels of Hebrews, as great as I feel about your 2 works, I think that what the 2 of you are doing is going to do far more as a ministry and as folks. I mean, this is an underground problem or issue, I should say. And when Stephanie was on our program, she was just pouring out, and my heart just went out to her. And I thought to myself, how many times have I neglected to reach out to the parent of a special need child? Because, well, they've got baggage. Yeah. I'm ashamed to say it, but I think that I have to be honest. I'd be glad to go out and have lunch with them, but
But when you're really honest, we all have baggage, don't we?
Well, we all have baggage, but
it's just a different type of baggage.
You don't have. I guess my point is, you don't have to be the parent of a special needs child to allow this book to minister to us the rest of us, how can we understand better? How can we be more inclusive of
Yes.
those parents? Because, as a church family, we're bound and we're knit to one another. And this is a torn piece of fabric that needs to be mended. And I'm just I just think God is His fingerprints are all over this thing.
I hope so.
Uh,
And when you're saying that, I just think back to when Ashley was younger, and I mean Ashley, if she was normal and could play on a ball team or any type of athletics, she is a phenomenal athlete, and she learned to roller skate, and she could roller skate forwards, backwards, probably upside down. I don't know, but she was great on the roller rink. And I just remember one time she went by herself. I'd take her, and she was usually by herself. But I remember one time this young girl came up and just commented about Ashley and how much she loved Ashley and how much she enjoyed watching Ashley skate. And when she said that, I mean, it just brought tears to my eyes. And that's what it doesn't take a lot to just acknowledge the parent's child. That's all you have to do to acknowledge that they have value or that they do something well. And when you do that, I mean, it's all the parent needs. It gives them the biggest boost and makes their day just to hear that somebody noticed their child.
yeah. Everybody has worth. You don't have to be quarterback of the football team. You don't have to have a million,
Exactly.
Twitter followers. Basically, we need to see each other through God's eyes.
Yes, exactly. And that's what the book is about. And it's in the end is a part called Come to the Table, and we're excited about that section because it's going to kind of wrap things all up and then let people know, non-Christians hopefully will pick up this book, but let them know that we all have special needs. All God's children have special needs in one way or the other, and He welcomes us all to His table. And so it's the opportunity for us to present the gospel in that closing in that book, and to give them something to think about and to make them feel, well, maybe I have value too. Maybe God isn't angry at me. So yeah, we're excited.
Well, I know the gospel is in good hands between you and Stephanie. Very trustworthy. Okay, so
With Stephanie.
Yeah.
I just have to tamp her down to keep from going too deep. No, I'm kidding. She would have Hebrew words all over that book.
If you want to know the Hebrew translation of anything, you can always tap Stephanie, and she'll know.
She's done a great forward, and then she also did a great section on God's perspective, and she's very good at when talking about God's word and making it understandable.
So, if that's not enough, you needed something else to do.
You interfered again.
No, this one's on you. I can't.
You think?
Well, you started it. I made it complicated.
I did start it, but I didn't imagine it being what it is. I just came to you with a little, I tell you how this started. You want to know how this started? Here, I finished the first 2 books, fiction. Okay. So yeah, that was the end of the fiction sequel. That was the sequel for me. Not saying I won't ever write another fiction book, but I didn't want to let go of my characters. I mean, when you write fiction, they become your family. Right. I mean, it is just amazing because I'm a seat of the pants writer, and it is just amazing to see characters just drop in out of nowhere, and then they become people you really feel like you know. And so I said to myself, I had never written a short story. And I thought, I just think I'm going to write a short story, about my fiction characters. And maybe I kind of had this idea that maybe I would take Emma and maybe I'd take Tucker and Drew and just write a short story about each one. And so I sat down, and the first one I picked was Tucker, who is one of the most lovable characters in the book. And so I sat down and I wrote a 1,500-word story about Tucker. And so after I wrote it, I thought, it was something that I wanted to give away to subscribers on my blog. You're always supposed to give something of value.
All
And
the
so I
experts
thought,
tell you. Yeah.
yeah, well, this will be something of value that I can give away to subscribers to my blog. So I did that. And then after I did that, I thought about our trailer, the trailer that you did for me, the first one especially, and how you narrated the beginning of the trailer and you put it to music and everything. And so I came to you and I said, Mark, I've written this short story. Would you just put some music behind it and narrate it for me? It's just 1,500 words. Just read it. I just wanted you to read it. And so you took it and you looked at it, and then you got back with me in a day or two, or I probably got back with you because you weren't getting back with me. And so I got back with you and I said, well, Mark, what do you think of the story? And you said, well, Starr, it has female characters in it.
Lots
and I said, I'm not asking you to act like a female. I'm just asking you to read the story. You don't have to sound like a female. Just read my story, have a little music about it. Around it would be nice. You still were not on board with it. And so I gave it a few days, and then, I just attribute any good idea that I have to God, because that's where it comes from. It's just his inspiration. But I thought about you not wanting to read it because of the female characters. And so I thought, well, shoot, if that's what holding him back, I'll get him some female voices. And so that's where it all started. And then you bit and you took hold of it. And then on top of that, you said, it was a little time later, it wasn't the very same conversation, but a little time later, you said, Starr, you know what? We can even put sound effects in this. And then I was like, oh my gosh, can we really? And so it has been the most fun. For me, it has been a breath of fresh air. I have loved every minute of it. And I just want to break right here, if I can, to commend PJNet and the PJNet family. Because a lot of the voices that we have in this are members of the PJNet family. Yeah. And I knew that I could come to you and that we could come to you and ask you to loan us your voice, because we had no money to pay for voiceovers, but to loan us your voice so we could do this pilot, because there was just, we saw it as maybe being more than one story, that we could develop a whole library of short stories done like this. And so I just want to thank Allison Treat, who is loaned her voice as the announcer, and then of course you, Mark, were the narrator and had the most to read through the thing. Ron Gallagher, oh my goodness, I cannot say enough good about Ron Gallagher.
He nailed it.
His Tucker, his presentation of Tucker. And I have had, well, even my publisher said, Starr, she says, Tucker was absolutely perfect. She said, you nailed it with Tucker. And so that made me feel good. And so then there was Becky. Can you tell her last name, Mark? And Koviak. She's the 540 Club. And Koviak.
Right. It's Aunt Koviak.
Aunt Koviak.
Aunt Koviak.
Well, Becky played Tucker's wife. She had one little line that she yelled out the window. She played his wife. And then Doug Carter. Love Doug. Love his voice. He did an awesome job too. He played Matt, who was a soldier, young soldier. And then there was Sandra Hart, who only had like one line, but she was actually Emma in the story. So I'm just so grateful, to all of them. And It is what you did with the voices, how they were all recorded independently. None of us were on a Zoom meeting or all together at any one time. Every voice was recorded separately, individually, and then we would send our recordings into Mark, and Mark just put it all together. I picked out the music, I picked out all the sound effects. We recorded our voices independently with Mark helping us with the prompts, the
Now,
lines,
you didn't
the
credit
line that
yourself.
came ahead.
You didn't credit
Oh,
yourself. You read a part too.
I did. I played Claire. I forgot.
Okay.
I was Claire. I
Yeah.
don't have that written on my list.
Yeah.
I put a list in front of me. I said, because as soon as I start naming them, I'm going to forget somebody. But I did. I forgot myself.
Hmm. Little did Starr know, folks, when this whole thing sort of mutated and evolved and it blew up, so to speak, at some point. But little did Starr know that about a year and a half ago, those of you who have been faithfully attending PJNet know that I had worked, I don't know, dozens if not hundreds of hours. We were going to have our own podcast platform because I recognize, as much as I love video, that video is not something you can consume passively. And I thought it would be good to have a podcast library. But I got 90% done and then got to that part where you upload. And when people are up, so I kind of bailed out on it. So little did Starr know that there was this project that was 90% complete of our own pjnet.tv podcast platform. So this short story, which is titled The Return, is our debut. Now, she hinted at if you have to pay for voices, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Ain't going to happen. Voices
Especially when you don't have any money.
Right. Well, even if you did, even if you had the money, the amount of money you would have to spend on these far exceed any. I mean, there's really not a whole lot for sale here. But what Starr came up with, you've actually got two different ideas. The first one we've already done is let's form a group of people, and Sandra Hart was one of the first ones you contacted. Basically find other people who are writers, authors, and such, and if they'll help you with your short story, then all of those, it's reciprocity. We'll all help do yours. Exactly. I'll help you, you help me. Right. And it worked. It worked. And some of the voices in there really don't have a book to reciprocate, to write a short story about. But it's an interesting model. But you've got another idea. My idea is this. I believe God is directing. I want a wholesome place where people feel safe and can consume a variety of content. Some just for entertainment, maybe some blogs, but other stuff. But safe content that wholesome.
Right.
And that we have so many Christian writers out there and authors out there competing, but we're up against a formidable opponent who is well funded, well organized, well capitalized, and highly motivated. So we want to counter program. So Sandra Hart is one of the ones you contacted initially, and she just couldn't wait. She is way too busy right now, but she's already written a manuscript.
Yeah.
It may not be our second, it may be our third, because also Allison, who is our outro, Allison Treat. Folks, we want to build a library, so I'm hoping that some Christian wordsmiths are watching this, whether it's right now or maybe later. Please let God allow yourself to dream. Could we do this? And put your words into something that can be consumed on these. Okay? And that's the hope, that we can minister not only to Christian writers, but to a culture that needs to hear good
Yeah.
stuff.
I want to tell you a little story. Is that I was went a couple of weeks ago to get my nails done, and I hadn't really let anybody listen. Hadn't It wasn't quite done. We didn't have the intro and outro done at that point and stuff, and so I hadn't really let a lot of people listen besides my husband and to the story. And of course, you know what happens in a nail salon.
No, actually, I don't.
Yeah. Oh, maybe you don't. But there's a lot of talking that goes on.
Okay.
And so, of course, she was asking me, what I was doing and this, that, and the other. And so I started telling her about this story. And so she was really interested. And so I picked up my phone because you had downloaded it, had sent it to me, what we had completed so far. And I said, "Do you want to hear a little bit of it?" And she said, "Yeah." And so I got it up on my phone and just kind of laid it there on the desk where she was working on my nails, and hit the button. And she ended up listening to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And when it was over, she looked at me and she said, "I felt like I was watching a movie." Mm-hmm. She said she just loved it. She said, "I just felt like I was watching a movie." And I said, "I do too." And I said, "That's what's great about it, is that you can do someone's nails, or I can cook my dinner in the kitchen, or I can be cleaning my house. I can have my earbuds in my ears, and I can be listening to a story. And it's like you get lost in it. And because it's not visual, it is an audio, your mind just goes mm-hmm. into full gear, and you just start seeing the images, and you start seeing the porch. That this is actually like an epilogue to my story, and you can listen to it without it being a spoiler. But if I was going to put it in my last book, it's called The Return, and if I was going to put it in my last book, I would put it between the last two chapters, right smack in between the last two chapters. And it's when Tucker, in the beginning of the second book, Tucker is an old man, and so at the end of the second book, or toward the end of the second book, where I would put this chapter, he is an old man, and he is returning to this house where Emma used to live. And so that's kind of, the setting for the story. And so when you're listening to it and they're talking about the porch, and you hear the sound effects of the chain creaking when they sit on the swing, and that chain starts swinging back. That swing starts going back and forth, and you're hearing that swing. It just puts you back when you sat on a swing and you heard that same sound. And so that's what my, nail technician was saying. It's just like I was watching a movie, because she was seing it in her mind.
Yeah, we've got birds chirping in the background. When the car pulls up, you hear the door, and folks, so please don't think that this is a podcast like a talking head, rant. No, that's not what it is. It's not an audio book either, where a narrator is reading a book. No, it's not that. Right. It's actually a theatrical production without the video, without the visuals. And every actor, every voice did a great job, and especially Ron's good anyway, but he's also
Ron had the biggest part, for him to be able to do that, never having done something like that before, and just wrap people around their little finger, Tucker. Yeah. Was amazing. He did an amazing job.
And we didn't set out to do this, but just it dawned on me that this is an amazing piece of marketing, maybe, because if somebody has published a book, say 3, 4, 5 years ago, the likelihood that book is still selling copies is slim and none. There's usually a lot of sales initially, and then they decay. They just taper off. Well, This is a way.
And it doesn't take long.
Yeah. It's a matter of how
they're
fast.
on to something bigger and better, It's like, it doesn't take long.
But I thought to
Something
myself,
shiny and new.
what an interesting way to revitalize interest in an older work easily. And you don't
Yes.
have to say, oh, go buy my old 5-year-old book, I've been asking you to buy for 5 years. Now you've got something new to say. You say, look, here's something free. Folks, this is all consumable, free to the public to consume. So that it gives you a way to market something that's based on your book. But if the person finds the short story interesting, there's, I think, some probability that they would probably find the book interesting too. And unlike so many podcast websites, when you when you go to ours, there's actually images of the book. There's that you can click on. It'll take you right to Amazon. So it's very easy to connect in all the voices. We have links to their Facebook, their webpage, their Twitter, their it's a visual experience from a desk, on your computer. But the sounds, it's a theatrical production. It is not an audio book. It is not a podcast per se. I don't know what to call
I
it.
played it for my husband at dinner one night, and when he got finished listening to it, he said, "That just reminds me of when I was little and we'd sit in front of the radio and we'd listen to Amos and Andy and we'd listen to all of these stories, on the radio. And it's the same experience as you visualize it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and you can
it's
listen to
just
this
fun.
driving your car.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea what God's up to, but whatever He's up to, we want to be a part of it. So, well, folks, we wanted to have extra time to go over everything, and it worked out because we're at 40 minutes, and that would be 20 minutes. And Starr, I will release you back to Stephanie. And
Yay! I've said to myself, Mark, we got to stop meeting like this, and it is not working out too well.
Yeah.
We keep meeting like this.
Stephanie will be there until Friday, I think, Friday morning, and you all have been burning the midnight oil on your new work, which we just talked about. So you can tell Stephanie you're back on duty and get to work on that book. Starr, thank you so much for this wonderful idea that has become such a part not only of my life but yours and hopefully many, many others. And I appreciate the opportunity to partner with you on it.
Well, I appreciate your commitment to excellence, Mark, and I've just admired your tenacity and how you're not going to let it go until it's right.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah, it was kind of a rush there at the end, but we made it. We made it, and
We made it.
By the way, you're the same way, Starr, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I am. That's why I appreciate you because not many people can hang with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the book trailer you see behind me, people actually have no idea, how for every second in that book trailer, there's probably an hour of work.
Exactly.
We got it.
It looks easy, but it's not. It's like anything else. That everything looks easy, but it's never easy.
Yeah, till you try it yourself. All right.
Right.
Well, Starr, thanks for sharing tonight. Can't wait to see how this unfolds.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks.
Thanks, PJ.
That was Starr Ayers telling her story, or stories, as the case may be. But what a special night this has been. Thank you, all of you in our PJNet family that have been so faithful and worked. You've done your part, and you're a part of it. And I just I can't say enough good about the team that we have. I wish it were bigger. That's all I can say. And as God provides, it will be. And I hope that this will be an important part of our outreach and our ministry. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. I want you to always, if you'll go to pjnet.tv and hit that button called schedule, you will get an idea of just how much we have going on. I mean, this is not a weekly blog. Okay, this is not a monthly blog. It's not a weekly blog. This is like twice a night, Monday through Thursday. And Barbara is on fire. She is like a banshee out there, recruiting first-time guests. And we have more first-time guests coming up in the next few weeks. I mean, folks, if you want on here, if you want on up there, take a number. Okay, we're booked. We are so booked. It's like unbelievable. But God is doing so many wonderful things, and I just can't wait. But that's going to wrap it up tonight. I always, anytime I have a chance to speak to any group, whether it be a group of 5 or 500 or 5,000, in the same way, and I know many of you say, I know what he's about to say, but you know what? Maybe someone is watching this for the first time. And for you, for all of us, but especially for you, I challenge myself. You know, you have to keep moving sometimes. And I just wanted to share a challenge that has meant so much in my life. And I hope you'll accept it. It's only 2 questions. Here they are. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? And the second question is, how long ago was that? The challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.